Hey everybody, I'm John Self. Welcome to Career Live. It's 11:30 a.m. Central Time, Chicago, and in Texas. We're glad to have you with us today. Today we want to talk about a great program that we've just launched on our channel, our learning channel, on a masterclass on Networking 3.0. And we also want to talk about the planning piece of that, which is really, really important to your career. So we're glad to have you with us today on LinkedIn. If you're joining us on YouTube, great. We're glad to have you. So we're off to the races. Networking 3.0, the first chapter dropped on Monday. The second chapter is now up. It is on planning, the planning portion, and then later today or tomorrow, it's already in what they call post production. Is the chapter 3, which is all about communication. Chapter 4, which we are currently working on, really focuses on the nitty gritty, the specific tactics of networking. So, hope you have a good bottle of water. I have some good Tim Hortons coffee. My wife is Canadian, so for those of you who are not from the Northeast or Canadian, you may not know who Tim Horton was, but he was a fabulous hockey player, a legend, and was killed in an untimely auto accident. But he now has a whole host of Dunkin' Donut style places all over the Northeast and into Canada, obviously, where hockey is still the national sport. So thanks for that moment, a little slurp of coffee. If you're a bottled water drinker, I hope you've got plenty handy. So let's talk about what's going on and why there is such a thing as networking 3.0. First of all, um, when they introduced LinkedIn almost 19 years ago, it was really focused. One of the real values they were touting was this will help develop one-on-one networking and to build relationships, and you can connect with people in your industry and find like issues. Well, that was great. And it was also 19 years ago. And if you read my blogs, video blogs, or listen, you know that I've really been kind of down on the one-on-one element of LinkedIn networking. Why? Because it takes a lot of time. It takes planning. It takes direction. Do you just throw it away? No. We're going to talk about that in a few minutes. But the second thing is that it also, if you want to be ghosted, then depend on two things: recruiters and your LinkedIn networking contacts. Unfortunately, manners have changed, values have changed, people have gotten much busier, and they don't respond. And what my clients have found where LinkedIn has proved more valuable is to have targeted posting. If you're in the market 4, 5, 6, 7 times a week, emphasizing your value brand statement. And I've had several clients suddenly not have any luck applying online, not having any luck trying to get help from their network connections, but they have been, in some cases, overrun with people calling them about jobs they're not interested in, and that's not necessarily a great thing, but it's at least contact. But one person I know has 3 or 4 opportunities that have not come from applying online. And so part of that was he got very busy with targeted posting. Every time you post, your name shows up. Now, in the old days, recruiters were just manually going through all those profiles. That's why they always used to say, if you don't have a good picture, you won't. With a good picture, you're more likely to attract the attention of a recruiter. Well, now the operative phrase is, if you don't have good content, if you're not visible, if you're not posting, the scanners aren't maybe not going to see you. So um, it's a whole different world. And so the promise of LinkedIn one-on-one networking is not as beneficial. But now what we're finding is that corporations, and this is going to become more and more common, use these automated scanners based on algorithms looking for people with certain characteristics, certain qualifications. They're looking for certain type of content they're posting. They have a bunch of little elements they're looking for, and they can scan thousands of records in a matter of minutes and really put together a panel where it used to take a retained search consultants maybe 30 to 45 days to build a panel. They now are able to do it in a matter of hours, at least the core group. So it is very important. So your whole thing of networking is changing. The whole issue of networking is changing. You can't depend on LinkedIn one-on-one, but you can depend on LinkedIn for posting, and your size of your network will attract attention to the number of people who see your post. So there's a causal effect relationship there as well. But the other interesting thing is that you really have to be more focused. And somebody said, well, that's sort of like trying to understand what questions you're going to be asked in an interview. Well, there's a system to help you anticipate that too. But let's talk about today. We can. That's a whole nother subject. And people who say that just are going to the interviews and they're not prepared. But let's talk about how you have to be focused. And Networking 3.0 is a career plan driven strategy. Okay. The old networking, you went to receptions, you met people at your local professional association, regional meetings, national meetings, you exchanged business cards. That was, you might write letters to people that you saw an article. Hey, congratulations. You did any number of things to try to build relationships. And that network, the people who did a good job networking were people who had, really had great success with their careers. The people who didn't have good networks and didn't get involved in networking are people who are regrettably on the sideline today. And there are some really smart people out there who never fully achieved their potential because they did not like networking and they never made time for networking. Well, now the challenge is you've got to have time to network, and it's a lot more challenging to build a network. So Networking 3.0 addresses those things. So as I said, it's plan driven. So if you look at all the potential questions in a job interview, the most frequent are 75 to 90, somewhere in that range. But if you look at all the potential questions, there are hundreds and hundreds. Books. There are best 101 interview questions. Well, it's hard to be prepared for 101. So there are ways you can get prepared for the targeted ones you're going to get. Back to planning. Okay, so I'll go anywhere to get a job. That's 50 states. That's Hawaii and Alaska. Okay, that's great. It's good. The more opportunities you're willing to open up, the better it is. But keep in mind that you need to be selective. You can't just say 50 states, and if I need a job, I'm going to apply in all 50 states. Well, that's great, but that's still just a variation of applying online. And the odds online are 150 to 1. And I don't have any updated information yet, but just anecdotally, I'll tell you that the average, people that I'm talking to in my practice, are applying somewhere between 20 and 50 applications before they really got one or two serious ones going. That's a lot of rejection. And so the people who have networks that are established, that are relationship driven, and they're targeted tend to do better. Let's talk about what I mean by targeted. There's some people that are very market specific, and there are some people who say, I'm 5 or 6 states. Okay. The Dunbar rule, let's introduce that, remind you of that. The Dunbar rule, Robin Dunbar was a British cultural anthropologist, I believe, and he made a study and concluded that the human brain, the mammal brain, but the human brain in particular, could only had the capacity to develop relationships with about 150 people. Okay, so that includes your friends. So not your work networking contacts. So if you back out your friends, you may have anywhere from 120 to 130, maybe less, maybe more, depending on how social you are. You need to target your networking efforts in states or markets where you have a great interest of moving to your next better job, or if you lose a job, markets where you and your family think you would enjoy living, and that they have employers in those markets that could give you the opportunity to find an equal to or better position than you had. And that's really how you have to start thinking about your career. That's how you have to start thinking about networking. It's not a scattershot approach anymore. It's very focused. It's very market driven. It's very plan driven. Okay. And you've got to have a plan. And the plan has to have performance metrics, and you have to incorporate your partner or your spouse. People, so let's talk a little bit about that, because that's the workbook that's in chapter 2 that's available now. The tuition course now is $149, and that includes 4 1-hour coaching sessions with me. Somebody said, gosh, that just lowered the value of the course. The normal value of the course is about $848. So $149 is a great value, and I'll give you your money's worth. So, one of the things about planning is that one of the spouses tends to be the dominant money, the dominant breadwinner, so to speak. And so that person kind of is in the dominant role of deciding when it's time to move for the next job. And, the old days in the 50s, 60s, and early 70s, IBM had a program where they had business development, corporate development. And so they moved their promising managers and executives around the country to various jobs to give them different experience with different divisions and different environments with different types of people to see how they would develop. And that's how they developed the people that they eventually promoted to vice president and higher. But they did it. The only people that moved people more than IBM were the United States Army or the military. The old joke is the IBM stood for "I've been moved." Well, companies don't do that as much anymore. So, there's not as much moving around the country. So, when you start thinking about, okay, I need to be very targeted. Where do you want to live? What organizations are in those markets that would be suitable employers, and they may be really best in class organizations. You may decide on the market based on the quality of the company you would like to work for as part of your growth up. Now, also keep in mind, the average person is going to change jobs about 12 times in a lifetime. If you aspire to be something like a city manager or Chamber of Commerce president, or one of those associations or whatever, you may move more. They used to laugh and said, the Methodist Church used to move their ministers every 3 years, whether they needed it or not. Well, hospital CEOs have had varying levels of tenure. And some of the bigger hospitals, they have long tenures, but some of the people on their way up may only stay 2 to 3 years in an organization. If you work for one of the for-profit companies like HCA, you can't grow in salary until you go to a bigger hospital. In order to go to a bigger hospital, you frequently have to relocate, and they are a big company of promoting from within. So, they're going to sort of set the plan for you. But relocation is just a fact of business life now. It's a fact of financial security now. And I went through an incredible career, and it just happened. But with the way technology is being developed and deployed into making employment decisions, the way technology is being used to decide who gets employed, is dramatically changing the structure of the job market. And that means that you are going to have to, you are absolutely going to have to, change the way you network. You're absolutely going to have to change the way you really approach planning. And planning cannot be a one-sided proposition. If you're in a relationship, you have a partner, or you're in a relationship and you have a spouse, and you're the primary breadwinner, you have an obligation to your partner or your spouse to sit down and keep them informed about what's going on with your career and what steps are next and what they can anticipate. Because picking out a particular market, if you lose your job, it's not going to, it's going to be more on you, and it's not. You need to pick out these markets in advance, and it needs to be a team effort, and people don't do that. And again, when you don't plan in advance, you create a lot of problems for yourself. The market is going to be more unforgiving with all the automation we have in the future. So you absolutely have to plan. You absolutely have to target organizations where you would like to work for in the future. You have to target organizations that you think would represent a next step up for you in your progression. If you want to be a CEO, you're probably going to have to move 15, 16 times in your career. That's a lot of moving. And especially if you want to work yourself up to a bigger organization. Sometimes chamber presidents stay a long time, sometimes not. School superintendents, my God, they ought to keep, some of the school superintendents ought to keep their boxes packed. Okay, or they ought to own a big trailer to help them relocate. I know a guy early in his career with the oil industry. When he was renting a house, he said, "Oh, this is good. I can park my trailer." And my father said, "What kind of trailer do you have? A travel trailer?" He said, "No, a moving trailer." And he did. He a lot of times they would move a lot of their personal possessions, and the company would only move the furniture and the big household possessions. And so he had a trailer that he pulled around when he and his family relocated, which was about every 18 months to 3 years. So, a lot of businesses, there's a lot of that stuff going on. Be focused, have a plan, okay? Target geography, target organizations, and then attempt to use your 130, 140, 150 Dunbar allotment of contacts within those markets, with those organizations. That's probably the best way to do one-on-one networking. So that's all in the course. I've had one of the values of this course, and this has been great. People who were, couples that, who use this plan, said, it is, our relationship is so much better because we have to communicate about these things. In the past, my husband didn't want to talk about, if he was feeling stressed at work, because he knew that might mean a relocation, and didn't want to tell me because he didn't want to upset me. Well, I hate to tell you, if you're a guy, or if you're the wife who's the breadwinner, and relocation may be a fact of life, and you just might as well talk about it, and you might as well plan together and collaborate together and hold each other accountable for performance, and hold each other accountable for achieving your mutual goals. And I think if you do that, you're not only going to have a better career, you're going to have a better life and a better, more productive relationship. And that's the feedback we've been getting, that it's been not only just transformational for their careers, it's been transformational in their relationship. So that's a quick summary of what's on the course. It's pretty detailed. And we talk a lot about that in our hourly coaching sessions, which then also supports implementation. Okay, so chapter 3 is going to be about communication, and that's all about, what do you post online? How do you communicate your values? Those are all very, very important things. And you need to have a personal mission, vision, and value statement. You need to understand your value brand statement. We're going to, this course will kind of refresh you on those issues. That's part of the process. So let's see how we're doing here. Um, I think one of the great things about being recruiter, and I did that for 27 years. One of the great things was that we absolutely, I was able to listen to people tell me their stories. And in this course, Networking 3.0, it's a master class. I tell the story of a guy who was in healthcare, whose father was a very successful CEO, who was kind of really pushing his son and creating a sense of expectation. He wanted him to follow in his footsteps. And that's not where the son's passion was. And I want you to, if you take the course, you're going to learn this incredible story about a young man who didn't want to follow in his father's footsteps. He wanted to do something that his grandfather was doing. He worked in his grandfather's business every summer and loved it, and worked during the holidays and absolutely loved it. And finally, at a dinner where he was being interviewed for another job, he had his moment, his epiphany, and it changed his life. You'll learn about that in this course. So there you are. I've been really blessed in that I've had a great career, and I've gotten, as a recruiter, I've heard hundreds of stories where people have made career changes, where people have made realizations that they liked the industry, but what they were trying to do was did not bring them any great satisfaction or personal sense of reward, and they've changed. And I've been instrumental in helping some of those changes, and sometimes I've learned about them later from other people. But it's a great thing if you're not happy to have the courage to do something that's going to make you happy. I once attended a meeting with a dinner with a bunch of lawyers in Dallas, and um, the guy who was my host said, John is a recruiter, and he just can't believe that we don't like our jobs. How many of you in here really like practicing law? And in this private dining room in this beautiful restaurant downtown, 4 people out of 12 raised their hand. 4 out of 12. And one partner that did not raise his hand, he was a young guy. And I recognized him from those weekly social magazines about who's doing what and who went to what ball and whose company they were seen in, sort of the modern day Rotogravura magazine. This guy there was one spread about his penthouse overlooking downtown and his sports cars, and he'd made partner and was making, he was in his mid 30s and was already making a 7-figure income. And you know what he said? I only have to do this for 25 more years and then I can retire. Holy crap. You don't want to live your life that way. Because last time I checked, you only get one shot. So do something that you like to do. Do something that gives you reward, that gives you, fulfillment, that you're passionate about. Now some things aren't monetizable. That's a hobby, okay? Don't confuse those things. But there are a lot of things that, you can do. In the story in the chapter, I had the good fortune. I don't know if his father was happy with me or not, but life's tough. I had the fortune to basically say the things that gave him permission to change, and he changed, and his life changed dramatically. We all have those experiences, and you've got to be open to them. And part of your career plan has to address those things. Am I doing what I really love to do? And if not, what do I need to change in order to have a happy, rewarding, fulfilling life? That's really, really important. And we can talk about that if you're enrolled in the course in one of our coaching sessions. Okay. I'm getting some questions that have come in. One was, why should I worry about um, my resume so much? Well, he's answering his own question. Why should I worry about my resume? I'm not customizing it, but I'm not getting a lot of input, but I'm not wasting a lot of time either. Well, if you apply for a job online, even if you don't customize your resume, it's still going to take you 30, 45 minutes. Now, next question, if you're not customizing your resume, is that a 45-minute slot of time or an hour slot of time that you can somehow magically get back and put it, rebank it in your life? No, you can't. Does that applying for a job that you don't ever hear anything about, does that help you find your next job? No, it doesn't. Oh, but wait, you ask, don't they save your resume and then apply it for another job later? Some companies do, most do not. Why? Because it's so easy to get a bunch of resumes now with scanners. It's so easy. There's so many people for the better jobs. There's so many people applying that you may be competing with 150 other people or 200 or 2,000. Okay. And so, they don't need to worry about keeping these databases that half the time, were just file drawers or computer files that accumulated people they never wanted to talk to. Never did talk to. I used to keep a database, and I think of the thousands of people in that database. I think, most of the people I always placed were people I knew, and sometimes I would go into the database to kind of refresh myself where they were, but I didn't routinely do searches of databases, and most companies don't either, because they can generate so many more new applicants. A database is where information goes to expire, where information goes to become irrelevant, where people fade away. So companies don't rely on that like they used to. Search firms definitely don't rely on it like they used to. You hardly ever hear a search firm now bragging about their proprietary data search so we can find you the right candidate. God, what a lame thing. Well, the other thing I talk about, it's interesting because search firms are so not as involved in process anymore that a lot of search firms are now calling themselves consulting companies. But getting back to the resume, if you're not customizing it, you're not getting called back. You're wasting your time. Don't do that. Don't do that. It's not really worth it. Okay, we're just about out of time for today. If you have any more questions, we have time for a couple more questions. Okay, can I just customize my cover letter? No, you got to customize your resume first and foremost. If they're not asking for a cover letter, do not submit a cover letter. Okay, this is another question I get all the time. But the resume writer told me they had optimized it for the industry. That's great. Okay, but it won't do a great job helping you connect with the computer that's scanning your resume. Your resume has to specifically be connected to the specific job you're applying for, because the job algorithm is what's grading your resume. It can be optimized for the industry, and if you don't have any of the keywords and phrases from that job description, you're not going to get called. So when resume writers start telling you that, that's just their lame way of trying to justify their value. Resume writers have a new purpose in life. If they're just relying on writing your resume and documenting your work, they're going to be extinct in 5 years with AI. Okay, trust me. But resume writers who understand that part of their challenge is to draw your value out and to understand your jobs and be able to highlight what you've done and do it in such a way that you can easily update it for each resume, for each job you apply for. That's where that resume writer's value will be in the future, because AI will replace them in a heartbeat. Okay. Okay. I think that's all the time we have today. I hope that this has been helpful. And we will see you back next week. We're a live stream in search of time. I've had some feedback that said, hey, 7:30 in the morning was better. So we had a pretty good crowd last week, maybe down this week. If you're around later this afternoon, we're going to be talking about some other issues on Instagram at 3 p.m. Central Time, Facebook at 4 p.m., and then the crazy place at 8 p.m. Central Time. We are on TikTok. And last week, the attendance was down because all of the the unsealed Trump indictments, or the original indictment, and it was so we were down some, but we still had 2,750 people, and people made fun of my bow tie, and so I got trolled for being the modern day career management Orville Redenbacher. So we'll see what happens tonight. Take care, everybody. Have a good week. If you have any questions, go to my website, go to the bottom of the page, and subscribe to you subscribe, or you can ask to have a free consult. Thank you very much. Somebody just said, hey, I always learn from your sessions. Some days I feel like I'm trying to learn how to do it without a script, and sometimes I feel like I'm wandering around in the desert, so I apologize. Avi Fishman, thank you very much. You've always been very kind with your support and your constructive criticism. So tonight we'll find out if I get trolled on TikTok for having my Orville Redenbacher tie on again, and we'll have some fun with that. The only bad news was, for about 3 minutes, here we are. I'm trying to build my credibility as this online coaching whiz, and so everybody wanted to talk about popcorn for about 5 minutes, which was the best way to cook it, and what were the merits of caramel corn. Good gracious. It was kind of funny. Anyway, thank you all very, very much. If you have questions, you can email me at john@johngself.com. Again, if you want to schedule a free consult with me, go to my website at johngself.com. Go to the button at the bottom of the page, talk to John, click it. You can do it by telephone or Zoom. Happy to accommodate you. We can talk about your career and answer any questions you might have that you don't want to raise online. And if you have an interest in our course, I'm working on some more elements to it now, and we're going to be adding more content to the site going forward. If you have particular needs, you think that we need to cover in a course or in some information for people who are trying to learn how to manage their careers on an ongoing basis, let me know, because we want to put a package like that together. Career management is not going to be optional going forward. If you don't pay attention to your career, if you don't have a strategy, if you don't have a strategy that partners with your partner or with your spouse, if you aren't setting yourself accountable goals, if you don't build a network, you're not going to be able to do what I did with my career. And I went from being a newspaper reporter to being a global executive recruiter, and I did it all without a plan. And all I'm telling you is, I know enough about what's happening in talent acquisition to tell you that ain't possible anymore. I hate to say it, but it's not. And I know that I did it with luck. I didn't do it with necessarily great talent and skill. The There was a if for those of you who have grayer hair, you remember probably a Canadian band in the late 1970s with the kind of catchy title Bachman Turner Overdrive, and they had a great song where the reprise was "You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet." And if you want to talk about a phrase that applies to career management and the talent acquisition business, you ain't seen nothing yet. Take care, everybody. Cheers, and we'll see you next week.